we are again then, folks. 2 weeks on, and another Off the Rails podcast making its way into your ear holes. Buckle up, this is episode 36. Roll up, come one, come all, and compose yourself for our key speaker, me, the offrailgamer, will begin his talk shortly, a man who needs no introduction. Right, let's do the introduction quick. I'm the offrailgamer, and this is my fortnightly podcast called Off the Rails. It's a show in which I mostly talk about video games. Mostly. Sometimes I get derailed and go off topic, hence the name of the podcast. You can catch it on Spotify, Amazon Music and YouTube. Unfortunately, I don't have an Apple account, so I'm not allowed to post it there as well. I started out on YouTube, and you can catch me on TikTok, Twitch, and I very rarely remember to post links to my content and live streams on X, but no one uses that anymore anyway, so I guess it doesn't really matter. I'm not verified anywhere, but I have rather kindly posted links to all my socials in the podcast episode description. You'll also see I've included my email address, offrailgamer@gmail.com, which is where you can reach out to me with any comments, queries or feedback. I'm a gentle soul, so please keep your messages clean and refrain from being mean. We've a semi-regular segment called Listeners' Whispers, in which I read out any emails that conform to these two golden rules. And with that, I think we can get on to the first part of the show proper, in which I'll tell you all about what I've been playing recently. Since last we spoke, I've carried on my play of No Man's Sky, and things have been pretty interesting. I saved a freighter from an attack by space pirates, and as a reward, the captain gave me the keys to the ship. So now, I have a floating base of operations I can summon to my off-planet location any time. I then added a couple of frigates to my fleet. That's right, I guess you can call me Admiral Off-Rail now. You can send these frigates out on different missions, and if successful, they'll return the associated rewards. Just be sure to match the ship's strengths to the mission details. Although it hasn't happened to me yet, I fully expect that you can lose frigates to any mission failure. Well, I haven't done too much else in No Man's Sky that I didn't already cover in the last podcast. I carried on jumping into cities' skylines though, and I'm currently working hard to overcome traffic and refuse issues in my new city. I think I've cracked traffic flow, but now the garbage keeps piling up. I'm going to need to find a suitable location for a new waste processing plant where it won't pollute my farmlands or my residential districts. But that sounds like a me problem, not a you problem, so I won't bore you with that any further. Instead, I added GTA San Andreas, the definitive edition, to my library, as it's currently free on PS Plus. I haven't got especially far into the game yet, but it's been cool hanging out with the Grove Street players I spent so much time with back in my formative teenage years. I think the definitive edition has given us some new missions because although I remember a lot of what I've been up to so far, I've been kicking it with Ryder, snatching up guns and ammo for the Grove Street families in some escapades I genuinely have no recollection of from back in the day. Of course that could just be where I haven't played the game for around 20 years until now. 20 years. And the vigilant among you may recall that I had been playing The Godfather on PS2. Whilst that's true, I have had to put my playthrough on hold as I needed to get a new PS2 to HDMI converter, and I'm yet to get this new one working. So that might be a return to sender, dearly-o. Anyway, having finished my Odyssey, why haven't I been a busy chap? I jumped back into God of War Ragnarok, which I started playing many moons ago. Spoiler alert, though this isn't a brand new game anymore, I appreciate some people still may not have gotten around to it yet. If this is you, please skip ahead around 30 seconds or so, and if you haven't skipped, well, Atreus has run off to Asgard to meet Odin, and the two are working together to restore a mask that they hope will allow them to look into a crack and get untold knowledge. Meanwhile, Kratos and Freya are searching for the Norns or Fates in an effort, I think, to find out where Atreus has run off to. I think I'm only about a quarter of the way through the game so far, so there's likely a lot ahead of me yet. I should say I'm writing this part of the script a week ahead of the podcast's airing date. A little insight into behind-the-scenes mechanisms for you. And that's the reason I've kept off the rails fortnightly, because although it may seem amateurish to you listeners, there's a fair amount of work goes into this. At the time of writing this, I did have dreams of getting some Bomberman kart racers up on YouTube at the weekend. You'll know better than I did whether we achieved this or not. Anyway, that's what I've been playing recently. Now I want to pick up some gaming news, as there's at least a couple of things I know I want to talk about. First up is something very close to my heart, as you'll no doubt be able to tell if you look at my YouTube uploads from earlier this year. You can now pre-order the Atari 7800 Plus, which is due to start shipping winter 2024. The only thing is, I'm not sure this will be able to do anything that the existing 2600 Plus console can't do. I mean, the 2600 Plus can already play both 2600 and 7800 game cartridges. Having said that, I do have a couple of carts it doesn't like to read, and I'm sure I read something about this new model playing some 7800 carts that the 2600 Plus can't. There's a risk it will just be the same technology in a different outer case. And while it does have an aesthetically appealing look about it, it doesn't stand up to the wood effect of the 2600 in my opinion, so I'm hoping it will prove to be technologically superior, or at least different in some way. I've been trying to read up as much as I can on this new system, but there's no comparison between the two models in terms of specs yet. Pre-orders will come with a nice new controller and a Crystal Castles game cartridge, which I don't have in my collection yet. It'd just be nice to know if it's worth getting if you already have the 2600 Plus. We may have to wait and see what people say when they get their hands on it. It doesn't carry a particularly hefty price tag, but at £129, it's not like you'll be parting with pocket change either. Anyway, I've popped a link to the Atari website in the podcast episode description so you can have a look at it for yourself. Maybe you can let me know if you're planning on picking one up. Next up, and it's not exactly news, as I've been talking about it for months now, we've got a release date for the Indiana Jones and the Great Circle game. Yes, on 9th of December this year we'll finally get an Indiana Jones game that fans of the franchise will be very happy with. I certainly hope so, at least. The trailer we saw at the Xbox Developers Showcase at the start of the year looked very promising, and I've been hyped for it ever since. It will initially drop as an Xbox exclusive, but PlayStation owners fear not, as the game is scheduled for a PS5 release in spring 2025, so you shouldn't have to be waiting too much longer before you can get your hands on it. I don't have a link for this one, as I just did a quick Google search for the release date, so I can't credit any particular website. Rather unfortunately, we still don't have a release date for the console version of Cities Skylines 2, and given I don't own a computer with the capabilities of the equipment I imagine they might be using at CERN, I'm starting to think I might never get to play this title. It's a good job then that the first game is still so much fun to play. I think this order was perhaps just too colossal to deliver on. Do you see what I did there? And with that, I think I'm just about ready to jump into the main part of the show. Star Wars! Star Wars Outlaws has recently released, and separate to that, I've been getting into all things space, especially since going to see Alien Romulus in the cinema. No spoilers, but I thought it was absolutely blinking brilliant. I imagine it'll go up on Disney Plus before too long, and I highly recommend you give it a watch when it does, if you haven't seen it in the cinema already. With all this in mind, I figured we'd come down to earth with some farming simulator games. No, I didn't. Although that would be a good topic for a future episode. But no, I thought we could talk about some games set in space, or around the concept of aliens and alien worlds, etc. So here's some games that do just that. It's not a countdown from worst to best or anything, just an appraisal of some games that come to mind. And the first game that popped into my head, which might surprise you, is Avatar: Frontiers of Pandora. The game that sets you down in James Cameron's sci-fi world full of oversized blue cat people. But it's more than that, really. Watching the films, which I would advise anyone against doing for their health, I always thought Pandora would make a great setting for a video game. And I think this video game proved me right. It's an amazing alien world full of oversized flora and fauna, and it's great to be able to explore it for yourself, rather than having to sit through an hour of a catboy being groomed by a whale. Yep, Avatar 2: The Way of Water really lost me. The game effectively plays like a Far Cry game, or I thought so at least. It has difficulty spikes that only truly enthusiastic players will get through. Unfortunately for me, I was wowed by the game's visuals for a bit, but fairly quickly lost interest in what was going on plot-wise, much like the films. So fans of the movies might get more out of this game than I did, is what I'm saying. No, but I don't want to totally diss it. It's one I can definitely see myself going back to, and for what I have played of it, I think I sank a decent amount of hours into it, and could think of little else at the time that I was playing. I guess it's split my opinion for now, and I don't know what to make of it. A game that I do know how to feel about is Doom. Now, the 2016 reboot of the series is totally badass, but for me it has to be the original Doom way back. Although my preferred version is the port we got for the PS1. It was the first game I ever played on the PlayStation, and it shook me. I'm sure I've told that story in a previous podcast, so I won't go over it again now, but in Doom, the story goes that scientists were testing out teleportation between Mars's moons, Phobos and Deimos, when they inadvertently opened a portal to Hell. Step up Doom guy to go and put the Hellspawn away again. Permanently, this time. Due to the popularity of this game, the phrase Doom clone was coined to describe other first-person shooters in a similar style, even though, now you'll need to check me on this as I might be mistaken, I think Wolfenstein did it first. Anyway, we can segue rather nicely here into a Doom clone that did it very well and ties into the inspiration for this list. Also on PS1, we got Alien Trilogy. It's very similar in style to Doom, in the sense that all you can see of your character is the weapon they're holding at the bottom of the screen, but instead of imps and cacodemons, this time you're hunting facehuggers and xenomorphs. It doesn't quite impart the same tension as the films, this is much more action-packed. However, it's no walk in the park, and if you love the Alien films as much as I do, you're sure to love Alien Trilogy. I did try playing it on a live stream a while back, but couldn't see a darn thing. Turns out I think I needed to adjust the brightness settings for my PS2. I'm hoping my new HDMI converter will fix that issue. If it starts picking up any output full stop, that is. Rather than grumbling, you'll note that I've been playing some No Man's Sky recently, and this definitely fits the bill of being a space adventure with aliens in it. This has to be one of the largest scale games in this category, with not just scale planets that could take you IRL days or even longer to explore, but also the actual vastness of space, including, I understand at least, billions of solar systems, each with up to 6 planets orbiting a star. The scale is massive, and I think it's possible that the game may never fully be explored. But what No Man's Sky always does for me at least, is put me in mind of a much bigger version of Spore, another ambitious game that sees you follow the evolution of a species from single-celled organism through to the dawn of its civilization, to the future and space exploration, at which point you can travel around the galaxy, visiting different planets and taking on missions of diplomacy, trade or aggression. I think Spore must have been inspiration for No Man's Sky. Okay, let's go back to the 8-bit era for just a moment. Now there were loads of games set in space, but I want to talk about just 2 of them. After all, I know not everyone's as enthusiastic about this era of gaming as I am, but if you'll take out your handbook and turn to chapter 4, you'll see that we're going to be talking about the Atari. And first up is a game many of us will have played on the school computers when the lesson plan wasn't engaging. In Asteroids, you piloted a little triangle around the screen. This is your spacecraft, and you control its thrusters and its weapons. Floating around you are giant space rocks, which you mustn't crash into, but must shoot to blast them in half, making them smaller and smaller until they don't exist anymore. Clear the screen of all the threats, and advance to the next level. Rinse and repeat. It's a very simple concept, but as I said in Atari April, many of these games truly did have replayability factor, as you kept coming back to try and improve your high score. The other game I want to talk about, for Atari, had a little more going on in it. In Cosmic Arc, you control the defences for an alien mothership travelling through space, and must blast away asteroids before they crash into the ship's hull. Once you've successfully warded off all these lifeless threats, you'll descend to the nearest planet. And here the gameplay changes, as now you steer a smaller ship hovering above the planet's surface. On the ground you'll see 2 critters wandering around, and what you want to do is get down there and abduct them. But be warned, you're on a timer. After so much time has passed, you'll hear a siren, which is your cue to get back in the mothership, whether you've completed your objective or not. The siren warns of an incoming asteroid, and you need to get back to the mothership to take control of the ship's defences to blast it before impact. If you've rounded up both critters and returned to the mothership before the siren sounds, you won't have to worry about this. Whatever the case may be, you'll next be back in space shooting asteroids out of the sky, and then either back down to the same planet to abduct any critters you'd missed last time, or else down to a new planet to abduct 2 new critters. As the game progresses, the asteroids in space move faster, while down on the planets, defensive turrets are erected, which will fire projectiles at your little ship. Naturally, you must dodge these projectiles, and try to abduct both critters before the siren sounds and the asteroid hits your mothership. I think Cosmic Arc is definitely one of my favourite Atari games. It really is a gem in my collection. Now the next series I want to talk about, I haven't played a huge amount of, yet. But I honestly don't think you can have a discussion about games featuring aliens without mentioning Halo. A series that really brings the sci-fi and sees you play on the side of the Spartans in their war with the Covenant. That is correct, isn't it? I played a little bit of multiplayer back in the day, and I think I played a bit of Halo 5 a number of years ago, but I don't really remember what was going on, if I'm honest with you. But I have much more recently added Halo ODST on the Xbox 360 to my collection. I saw one of my mates playing a bit of this game back when it released, and it really captured my imagination. It was a bit where you're moving through a city after some kind of battle, from what I could gather at least, and you pick up audio logs to try and piece together exactly what happened. That's what I understood to be happening, though I did see about 20 or 30 minutes worth of gameplay in isolation without knowing what was going on in the storyline. Nevertheless, it's one that I'm looking forward to finally playing for myself. I'm only about 15 years late to the party. Must be close to that now. And when I have played through the campaign, I'll be able to do Halo a much greater service, as all I can really do now is spout off some buzzwords like Cortana, Master Chief, and Warthogs. It was silly of me to include a game I know so little about, but as I say, it's definitely deserving of a mention. Moving on, let's go back to the PS1 and Oddworld, Abe's Odyssey. You play as Abe himself, of the Madokan race, enslaved workers for Rupture Farms, but Abe uncovers plans to process the Madokan into new meat-based food produce. It's all looking a bit... spoiler alert. Here's your cue to skip 10 seconds. It's all looking a bit Soylent Green. Taking a leaf out of Charlton Heston's book, Abe decides to try and thwart these plans with an escape plan, attempting to bring as many Madokan along with him as possible. Well, I say escape plan, but it really seems much more reactionary, dealing with things as they come up, rather than following a strict blueprint to freedom. It's a platformer puzzle game in which you'll run, jump, sneak, and even mind control others to get through levels. You can also give other Madokans simple commands like, "Follow me," to get them to help you out in parts. But hey, before we let time run away with us, I did mention the release of Star Wars Outlaws being one of the influences for this episode. So it's unfortunate then that I haven't played Outlaws, but I have played a few Star Wars games, and one that I have very fond memories of is Star Wars Battlefront on the PS2, not the collection of minigames they gave us in the PS4/Xbox One generation. SWB was absolutely incredible at the time we got it, throwing us into battles on iconic planets and moons from the films like the Cloud City over Bespin or the frozen world of Hoth, and even the forest moon of Endor. But best of all was the game mode Galactic Conquest, which gave every battle more significance as you tried to wrest control of the galaxy in the Clone Wars between the Separatists and the Republic, or during the Galactic Civil War between the Empire and the Rebels. After you win so many campaigns in Galactic Conquest, you get access to a special bonus. In most cases, you'll simply overrun the planet, and it can't be contested anymore. But if you're playing as the Empire, you'll get a cutscene of the Death Star being powered up, and the planet of your choosing being blown to bits. But choose wisely, as each planet gives you a different bonus that can be used in battle, such as reinforcements or sabotage, etc. So don't lose out on a bonus you tend to utilise the most. But what about the time before interstellar travel was possible, and we couldn't just hop in a spaceship and nip from one planet to another? It all had to start somewhere, right? Well, in Kerbal Space Program, spaceflight isn't a given. It's something you need to research and work towards. You start out with just a few parts, a rocket, small fuel tank, and a cockpit in which one of your fellow Kerbals will sit to pilot the craft. With a successful launch, you'll look to develop your technology to soar ever higher, and to stabilise the flight path so it goes straight up instead of running off at an angle. Within a few missions' time, you'll have to start worrying about thermal shield protection to get you through the planet's atmosphere without burning up, and maybe add a parachute to, soften the landing and prevent your Kerbal from being jellified in a crushed tin can. You can pick up missions to earn credits that can be spent on upgrading your rocket ship to progress further through the game and get further off the planet and deeper into the vastness of space. You can fix scientific equipment to your rockets to take readings from space, furthering your understanding of the Great Vacuum and informing your research department to bring you new and exciting upgrades. I don't think I've talked about Kerbal Space Program in more than a year on the podcast, and I haven't played it in about as long either, but bringing it up today has reminded me of the enthusiasm I had for it at the start of 2023, and now I'm feeling inclined to either load it up again, or maybe see if its sequel is going for a reasonable price at the moment. Anyway, there's some space games for you. What do you think? Have you played any of these? Or can you think of any others that I missed? I know Ratchet & Clank deserves more than an honourable mention, so there's a game to make the list if we ever revisit the subject. But I'd love to hear from you. Drop any comments, clean and not mean, to offrailgamer@gmail.com. Otherwise, Off the Rails will be back in 2 weeks' time, and I'll see you then. So, bye for now.